to the Beyond Cinema studio presented by CELEBS.com here at TIFF. Alex Gibney, congratulations on Mea Maxima Culpa. Why choose this title for this film?
You know, we were talking about it, and we were talking about that moment in the Mass where at least when I was younger, you'd thump your chest 3 times and say, Mea Culpa, Mea Maxima Culpa. It was that last one, is that sense of guilt and remorse that was all tied up in the liturgy of the church, and that's the moment at which you confess your sins just before you take communion. So it seemed to have something to do with the idea that this is the greatest sin of the church, but also, you know, has another meaning, which is the kind of cycle of guilt and taking upon oneself sins that you shouldn't necessarily take upon yourself.
It feels like every year, maybe for the last 10 or so years, there's some sort of story, whether it's like 60 Minutes or a documentary like Deliver Us from Evil, where we're revisiting these priests who have these allegations of abuse, you know, hovering over them. They have these kind of paper trails that lead up to people in power within the church, within the Roman Catholic Church, that seem to suggest that there's been, you know, an awareness of this problem for so long. How is it that we're still kind of battling this problem within the church, and that doesn't seem to be any real solution on a year-to-year basis?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think there are starting to become solutions, particularly in Ireland. I think people are voting with their feet. You know, in Dublin, mass attendance used to be 85%. Now it's less than 5%. So I suppose that's one solution. But I think, you know, the interesting thing is that the church for many years has been very good at saying, oh, we've got a few bad apples, you know, and avoiding the charge that the barrel is rotten. Well, I think we're starting to come to the understanding, and that's what the film is about, that the barrel is rotten. Not the faith, not the religion, but the hierarchy, the system of control and power that sits atop this religion. You know, you can find documents going back to the 4th century talking about what to do with, you know, pedophile priests. It's been going on for a long time, but we've allowed it to happen because we've given them so much free rein because they're supposed to be holy men.
And it seems so that people are scared not to affiliate themselves with God in some sense too. In the political spectrum, it doesn't seem like we have a speech these days where God's not being thanked at the end of it. So is it politics that's kind of affecting religion, or is it religion that's affecting politics?
I think it's both. Look, you know, even in this context, you won't see any politician rail against, at least not in the United States anyway, you won't see any politician rail against the crimes of the Catholic Church. Finally, it happened in Ireland. You know, the head of the civil government in Ireland finally stands up and talks about a church that's responsible for the rape and torture of children. Now, that got everybody's attention. But it's very difficult because you don't want to turn off so many followers. And I think that's a tricky thing. And in the film, I tried very hard. I grew up Catholic. I tried very hard to make a very important distinction between faith and belief in God and the crimes of a hierarchy that refuses to allow for the fact that they're covering up crimes because they think the priesthood is somehow better than other human beings.
And in fact, one of your subjects, I mean, we focus a lot on these guys that were abused in a lot of deaf school. The deaf school. And one of these guys makes that exact distinction. It's not the church. We're talking about this illegality and this crime, and then we have to separate that from thinking about the religious aspects of it. Like you said, people are voting with their feet. It's kind of the similar thing that needs to happen with politics, is that either there's a people's revolution where there's so many people that are acting in one direction that it can't be avoided any longer. Is that really the only thing that's going to affect the church's decision, is bottom line, because they're not collecting that money off those communion plates every week?
I think ultimately that is it, unless you have forceful leadership. But forceful leadership in the Catholic Church seems to be absent. Most of them are politicians, much like, civil politicians. And they weigh moral considerations within the context of Vatican politics. That's not a very pretty picture. I think in some ways, this Pope, Pope Benedict, who has been a very strict theologian, his job as head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith was to monitor the rules of the church and to punish those who break the rules. Well, he would say that, look, if you don't want to follow the rules, leave the church. But I think what they're hoping is to make up for the people who leave in developed countries with the people they gain in Africa, South America, and hopefully Asia, which is where they're making a big, big push. I mean, there still are 1 billion Catholics. But, people are beginning to start to reckon with this problem. And it will be interesting to see if going out all over the world, some of the information about this will help protect children in the future.
Do you think the church will watch this film?
I suspect that somebody will. I mean, there was an interesting piece that just came out in Daily Beast. Somebody had seen an advanced copy of the film in Rome, and went out to the church for comment. Their comment suggested that they're likely going to take a look. And
what would you hope to gain from having any sort of communication open between you and someone up in the hierarchy?
I'd love it, frankly. I mean, we tried very hard to get it in the making of the film. We knocked very loudly on the front door of the Vatican, but all we heard was the echo of our own knocking. There wasn't anybody rushing to the door to let us in. So I would be delighted to engage in some kind of dialogue. And what I find interesting about it is that I think the church would say, we're not going to engage in any kind of dialogue. This is just, what did Cardinal Sedano say once? Petty gossip. That strikes me as the response of an institution that's all about power. It's not about charity. It's not about love. It's not about engaging with people. Look at this situation with the American nuns who work so hard to care for the sick and the poor. And they wanted to raise legitimate questions about how the church conducts its business, the role of women in the church. And they've been told flatly, in no uncertain terms, back off. We're not going to have that discussion, and you'd better shut up. Well, to their great credit, they're slowly but surely trying to, insist on a voice. And it's that insistence by people in the church and the faithful that ultimately will change it, or they'll leave and form a parallel church.
Do you ever get, people telling others to back off? Do you ever have these sort of personal repercussions? Did you have any communication from anyone saying, Alex, maybe this is not the right topic for you?
I mean, up until this point, today will be the first public screening of Mea Maxima Culpa, Silence in the House of God. And we kept this film under wraps for a long time. Very quiet about it, didn't announce it, didn't talk about it, because we wanted to encourage dialogue. We don't know what the reaction is going to be, so it'll be interesting to find out. I'm not that concerned unless there is no reaction, but I suspect there will be.
How do you go about choosing? Elliot Spitzer, Enron, Magic Trip, and Ken Kesey, such a broad spectrum of subject matter. How do you go about choosing what you're going to either put the Alex Gibney brand on or spend this sort of much time with?
Well, sometimes the stories come to you. Sometimes you go to the stories. What's that old sports line? Luck is where opportunity meets the prepared mind. So sometimes stories come to you and you get lucky. And I think variety is important. Doing a story like Gonzo or Magic Trip about Ken Kesey, they were important and fun journeys that helped to balance some of the darker topics I've taken on. And some of those topics, Spitzer, Enron, Taxi to the Dark Side, and Mea Maxima Culpa, in some ways, though I didn't really plan it this way, they were all about abuse of power and how power is wielded and what we, the powerless, can do to stop the abuses of the powerful.
Did you have this, like now when you make a film, do you have to worry about distribution? With HBO on this project, was it always a case that it was going to go there and then you could just make the film freely, or did you have to wait till it was done until you knew that HBO were going to kind of take it from here?
No, HBO came in very early. I mean, at the beginning, they were a key financier of the project. They funded 2/3 of the budget. So we knew they were in early. But we also knew that the film would be distributed worldwide and that it would have a theatrical release in addition to the HBO broadcast. So, you know, it was all about finding the right partner for the right project, and everyone is a little bit different.
Is that why you have, you know, guys narrating like Ethan Hawke and John Slattery from Mad Men and, you know, Chris Cooper? Is it to give it that sort of either theatrical benefit of having those names attached, or was there some other kind of personal reason for having them in there too?
I mean, we wanted good actors because I didn't want the voices of the deaf men to be performed by people who felt like a kind of, you know, droney translator. We wanted people to inhabit them, and those guys are good actors. And yes, there's a certain cachet to having, you know, recognizable folks like that, so it's a benefit in that sense.
Yeah. And, you know, from here, first screening, how do you feel when you show a film for the first time and sitting there watching the audience? Do you still get nerves, you know, kind of waiting for that response, those initial responses?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what you live and die for if you make movies, is sitting in that theater, the first public screening, and feeling what the reaction is. It's usually terrifying.
Is life different post-Oscar as well?
Life is a little bit different post-Oscar. You know, it's a little bit like, I probably shouldn't say this, it's a little bit like losing your virginity. I mean, before you lose your virginity, you think you're all consumed, like, oh my God, I've got to get laid. And then when it happens, it's like, oh, okay, you know, I can move on now. I think that it was a great, you know, it was a great honor, but it also allowed me a certain amount of freedom. It bestows on you mysteriously a certain cachet, which is useful.
Well, we appreciate you spending a few minutes with us, Alex, and congratulations again.
Thanks a lot.